Now we're going to go on and discuss permanent makeup technique. And as we mentioned earlier, it's very important where we position our pigment to get the correct color and to get the correct effect. But there are two different ways that we can actually work with our machine and implant our pigment into the skin to get a little bit different effect, as well as also to get better retention. So let's take a look at those two methods. So you can, and you'll see this in your manual too, but you can go ahead and you can work with your needle at a 90-degree angle, which is straight in, or you can work at a 45-degree angle, and it's going to come in on an angle. If you're doing this, you're going to implant about 40% more pigment. And not just because you have more of the needle implanted at that angle, but also because the weight of the skin itself will close up against that angled opening, and you're not going to have pigment coming out of directly out of the wound that you just made. They're used for different types of effects. So it's not that one is better than the other at all times. Definitely this at an angle is going to give you a little bit more longevity, more of a tattooed effect. However, there are certain styles, certain times that you would work at a 90-degree angle. And even though you're not getting as much pigment implanted, you still are going to have about a 40 to a 50% retention of color. However, with the 45-degree angle, having that extra pigment implanted, you're going to have about 70 to 90% of that pigment retained. And what we mean by retention is after the healing process finishes, how much pigment is actually left in the skin. Now, we always do a touch-up session for clients. However, the less touch-up that we have to do, the easier it is for us, but also the better it is for our client's skin. So just remember, you'll either be using the 45-degree angle or the 90-degree angle. I did this already. Now, as far as the needles that we're going to be using, there are different configurations. We also have different tapers. So first of all, if we're talking about round, we're actually talking about our needles that are put together literally in a round configuration. Flat is going to be a straight line, and Magnum is going to be usually a flat line but in rows. And then we have what's called stacked, and stacked is where they are very, very close together and they are in rows. Now, our tapered needles, our long tapered needle is going to be most often used for liners. It's a little bit sharper at the end, a little finer at the end. And then we have our short taper, which is going to be used most often for shading, where there's a little bit more width at the end of the taper and you're going to cover more area. So just think of the difference between drawing just a line on paper versus, say, coloring in a design on paper, where the more you cover at one time, the better it's going to be. How do we actually read what type of cartridge we have, or when we are looking at boxes or we're looking online what we're going to purchase? Usually you are going to see a combination of numbers. And the first number is the sharps size. So basically the size of your needle. Then we are looking at how many needles are actually in the configuration. So you might have 1, you might have 12. It really depends, and that's going to be this number right here. So how many needles we have a 3, so that means that there are going to be 3 needles, and they're in a round configuration. Round is meaning how they're put together. So you'll have 3 that when put together make a circle, and then because it's a liner, you have that long taper to the needle, and that long taper is going to give that nice fine line that you're looking for. Now we'll have some other examples on the next slide. Here we have our 8 round shader. So 8 needles in a round configuration, but the taper is a shorter taper, so it is designed to cover more area. It is designed for shading. And then here we have a 3 round liner again, 3 needles. They're in a round configuration and they are designed for lining. So keep in mind, it doesn't mean that you can't line with a shader or shade with a liner, depending on how many needles are in that configuration, of course. But if you really are looking at doing detailed, beautiful work, there might be times when you are using 2 different cartridges to get the effect that you are striving for.